So this is noting that the impulse to control, because basically we want to get our way. We want our needs to be met. We want our vision to manifest, whatever. So we're trying to get that to happen. And when we use the control modes, the controlling, power over, dominating, manipulative modes, sometimes we can get good linear results with that, but we also are invoking resistance from that we're trying to control. The people or systems that we're pushing, we push because they're not willingly giving us their life energy. So we have to push in some way to get them to move in the directions we want. And if it's a totally mechanical or physical system, you want to move this rock from over here to over there. There's even ways to get the rock to collaborate using levers and all that. So there's it has a tendency to roll, so let's work with that tendency. But to the extent it's mechanical, it has a certain resistance that we need to deal with. We're dealing with living people and living systems and, living ecosystems and organisms. There's more life energy there that if we can figure out how to work with, will save us a lot of extra energy, having to put energy in and manage it somehow all the time. If we can help it run itself, it's like a related pattern of self-organization here. And design the self-organized system in a way that all the participants in the self-organizing system are getting benefit, including us, because we're part of it. So that kind of logic in general, and that goes for working with all different kinds of entities and systems. And sometimes it's necessary. I mean, getting the spoon to your mouth is, in a collaborative way, can be, in most situations, is unnecessarily complicated. Picking up the spoon is the way to go if you have your good motor control. So that's a power over. And, if there's a really urgent situation and certain people are competent to handle that, we just turn ourselves over to those competent people. Boat capsizes when you're on the river and you have somebody who particularly knows what to do in those circumstances. You work with them to handle it rather than saying, hey, we have to sit down and do our consensus process. So there's situations where power over, where more managerial approaches or force are needed. But the standard one of the kid running out in front of the truck and you go race out and grab the kid. But realizing that whenever we use power over, we are going to generate some kind of current or future residue, sort of karmic, something. We have done something which interferes with the natural flow of things, and the natural flow of things adapts to that in ways that sometimes are not helpful and get in the way of things we want to do in the future. So to the extent we can operate in a collaborative way, we are using the energy of the life around us and the energies that are in the situations we're in to do a bunch of the work that's needed to deal with the situation. So that's a reason to minimize power over. It's very tempting to use control and manipulation and managerial approaches when you want to have things be in a particular way, but to recognize that there's an undercurrent to that. And in terms of the relationship to wisdom, the definition of wisdom that we're using here for, a workable definition is taking into account what needs to be taken into account for long-term broad benefit. So if you are engaging the energies of, people, life forms, whatever, and the energies and the relationships in the system, whatever, you're using that in a way that benefits all the people or entities involved in the system, that is implicitly, by definition, as I say, a form of wisdom. So we are always on the lookout for how to partner with whoever or whatever's there in the system, how to make it very lively, and to only do managerial control, manipulation, force when it's really necessary to do that. And of course, these are skills to be learned by individuals, by groups, by whole societies. It's not something that's necessarily easy to do. But the universe tells us, and people tell us, if you are pushing something and there's resistance, you're not using the life energy that's there. So there's a lot of feedback loops that can help us learn if we want to learn. And that resistance is one of the main feedback loops that can help us learn what we need. And that image, because the circle is a design that minimizes power over. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it is different from having chairs bolted to the floor in rows facing the stage. I have often, when I'm put in a situation of doing a speech from a podium or a stage, and there's a bunch of people in rows in front of me, I make a point of saying, notice how hard it is for you to talk together and how easy it is for me to talk to you from this setup. And that's a good example of a system that structures the way we think and act and respond in situations. If the chairs are not bolted to the floor, of course, you can always move them. But that's a top-down setup versus circle. Circles it's harder to dominate in the circle, although some people are really good at it. It lends itself to more interaction. The teal organizations in the book that we both have read, that's an example. I was thinking of a flat management chart that has the boss, the so-called boss, the CEO is on the top or in the center, you could say. CEO's in the center, and then there's all these teams around them, and that's the management chart. But people who are not familiar with the teal model wouldn't know what that was. Consensus is a non-dominating thing, although, again, any of these things can be used to dominate. Dynamic facilitation, open space, World Cafe, all of these are emergent interactive kind of processes. Collaborative intelligence as such, Aikido, teamwork, minimizing inequality. And when there's massive inequality in the society, there's now studies of the economic inequality because it's so gigantic. And societies that are more equal tend to have better outcomes in their decision making. Campaign finance reform is the way to interfere, minimize power over that wealthy people can play in societies. Elections, constitutional checks, networks, of course, are basic. I said, permaculture is trying to do a power with thing with all the entities involved in a particular setting, including the sun and the rocks, and as well as the plants and animals and people.